Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Right now we're in Ludlow, California, and the Mojave Desert is filled with ghosts. Not the kind that rattle chains, but instead crumbling foundations and abandoned cemeteries where towns once stood. Out here on the other side of the tracks are two nearly forgotten names, Ragtown and Stedman, which were once desert outposts thanks to mining. One town had strict rules and banned alcohol, and the other, well, it was called Ragtown for a reason. Today we're going to travel down an old desert road and try and see what's left of these two nearly forgotten places. We are starting out today right off historic Route 66 in the not quite ghost town of Ludlow. Ludlow was founded in 1882 and started out as a railroad town. At one point, 3 different railroads came through here. In the railroad days, Ludlow supported commercial buildings, a mercantile, and services for railroad workers and travelers. Then, with the discovery of gold in the hills near here, the town got an economic boost. Gold and copper from the nearby mines, along with things such as borax from the Death Valley area, would come through here. Over time, as mining waned, Ludlow's economy took a hit. But with the designation of U.S. Route 66 in 1926, Ludlow shifted to become a service stop for highway travelers, gas stations, motels, cafes, etc. But the creation of Interstate 40, which bypassed quite a few of the smaller Route 66 towns, diverted traffic away. Ludlow suffered a second decline when highway traffic dried up. But Ludlow is still hanging on, though a lot of the buildings look like this. However, Ludlow isn't the ghost town we've come to see today, so let's hit the road. Google Maps has the road going straight here, but the train tracks are in the way, and it doesn't look like there's any way over them. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how to get to the other side of the tracks. And the trains are coming by constantly, so trying to cross them and possibly getting stuck is not an option. It looks like we found a way to get to the other side over here. If you can't go over the tracks, go under them. Now to find our way back to the road. There are some more abandoned buildings here on the south side of the tracks as well. Aside from a couple of gas stations, there really isn't much in Ludlow anymore. Here is the Ludlow Cemetery. Most of the graves here don't have names on them, they're just simple wooden crosses. But this is the final resting place for some of the people who built and lost the towns we're heading to next. I just noticed this sign that's knocked down that says, "Road closed 3 miles ahead." Hopefully that's not the case, or else this is going to be a very short video. And here is the dirt road we're going to be following for about 7 miles into the desert. This is called the Bagdad-Chase Road. Both of the town sites we're heading to lie within the Buckeye Mining District, a remote, arid region of low hills and dry washes that boomed briefly around the turn of the 20th century when gold and copper were discovered. The Bagdad-Chase mine was the largest of the mines. It actually was the richest mine in the history of San Bernardino County. After gold was discovered down here, a railroad line was built around 1903, the Ludlow and Southern Railroad, going from the mines at Stedman to Ludlow. The railroad was critical to the viability of mining in this remote area, allowing the output of the mines to reach larger markets. This road somewhat follows the path of the railroad in places, but it was generally further to the west. And speaking of the railroad, we can still see the old railroad bed here alongside the road. The tracks are long gone, but it headed this way, towards Ragtown in the distance, which is our next stop. We've reached the site of Ragtown, and if there's any doubt that this is where Ragtown was, well, there's a historic marker here. This marker was put up by E. Clampus Vitus, which does amazing work getting historic markers put up across the West. I think it's great that even in a remote place like this, a historic marker is here. Without that marker, it's pretty hard to tell that anything was ever here, though I wasn't expecting to see much as this place was pretty much a tent city. The fact that many of the dwellings here were tents gave it its name. Well, that and also because the area had a reputation as a red light district. We'll take a look around and see if we could find anything that's left of Ragtown. Stedman was the center of mining activity, but there were strict rules there. No alcohol was allowed and no prostitution. Two things a lot of miners at the time weren't going to do without. So Ragtown sprung up here with less formal structures, a more transient population, and services for miners and travelers outside the main camp. Services such as bars and ladies of the night. When miners at Stedman wanted fun, they had two options: take the train to Ludlow or walk to Ragtown. A lot of the times, Ragtown would be the better option because you weren't reliant on the train schedule to get back. And it looks like there's an old metal can over here. This is the first man-made thing we've come across so far. So far, it's pretty hard to tell that for a decade or so, people lived right here. It looks like there's a rock pile up here. According to a map I have from the 1960s, there is a cemetery in the area, but I haven't seen any trace of one at all. If there was one here, any sign of it has long since disappeared. Sometimes a pile of rocks is nothing more than a pile of rocks. Well, there is something metallic over here. I'm not sure what this is yet. It looks like it may be a frame for a cot or something. Whatever it is, it's modern trash. It appears someone probably camped out here at one point because right next to the frame, we have a fire pit. And just by the nature of this place, I don't think we're going to see much of anything left of it. That cemetery that shows up on the old map, if it was here, could be anywhere. While there's really no trace of the town left, the same can't be said for the mining. So let's head over to the hills real quick and see what's left over there. Walking over to the mine area, I just noticed this post in the ground. I'm not exactly sure what this is, but kind of like the pile of rocks, sometimes a random post is just a random post. You can see all the cuts from the mining that went on here. This hill is called Swede Hill, and I believe the mine here is called the Old Peat Mine, though that may be the mine on top of the hill. The whole hill is just covered in mines. I've climbed up the hill to get a closer look at some of the mines, and we'll stay on this side of the fence, but Swede Hill looks like Swiss cheese. I always stay out of old mines. Going into them is a little too dangerous for my liking, but some of those YouTube channels where they do explore old mines could have a field day here. You can see all the tailings from the mines here, and it looks like right here there would have been rails. There's still a tie right here. Let's walk a little further down. Someone sure had fun using this barrel as target practice. But here's another railroad tie. And down below us is the former site of Ragtown. I'm still walking around the Ragtown area, and I just noticed this rock pile, and it didn't look natural, so I figured they must have been doing some mining right around here as well. And sure enough, it looks like someone dug down right here. Let's take a look and see how deep this is. So this one's not very deep. Maybe only about 4 or 5 feet or so right now. It looks like there might be some more over this way. You'd really have to be careful if you're walking around out here in the dark, because none of these mines are marked at all. It looks like they started another one here, but didn't get very far. Here's a post that may have had a sign at one point. My guess is that it was a warning for this mine right here. This one looks deep. I don't want to get too close because I don't know how stable anything is, but wow, this one, I can't even see the bottom. Well, there is a ladder in here, or at least what's left of one. Wow, if you fell into this thing, it's game over. I'm trying to look at this from different angles without getting too close, and I can see down at least 50 feet, and I don't see the bottom. There's an old car over here. Hopefully whoever was driving it didn't fall into that mine. It looks like someone left a refrigerator out here too. I'm not sure what the make of this one was, but it's an old one. It's been shot enough times that it looks like Bonnie and Clyde's death car. I almost missed this, but there's a survey marker in this pile of rocks. All throughout the area, and in fact all throughout the Southwest, you can find these white PVC pipes sticking out of the ground. These are mining claim markers. They mark the edges of a mining claim. So if you're ever out in the desert and you come across one of these, that's what it is. And they're required by law to have these caps on the top, and that's to prevent birds or bats from getting into them. And it looks like there's another car out here. It doesn't matter how remote of a place you get to out in the desert, it seems like somebody else has already gotten there first and left a car there. This one looks like it was a Chevy, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Here's the other side of the car. It's less rusted on this side. When you look around this area and see how barren and desolate it is, it's amazing to think that people once lived here. But I guess throughout history, the lure of gold has made people do crazy things. Way off in the distance, there's still a tower up from one of the mining operations. It seems like you can't go more than a few hundred feet without finding a hole in the ground. They were looking for gold and copper everywhere. You probably can't see it with this camera, but I'll zoom in. But from here you can get a really good view of Amboy Crater off in the distance. It's about 20 miles or so away. At night you might even be able to see a Route 66 icon from here. The famous neon lights of Roy's Motel in Amboy. We are back on the road, and we only have about 2 miles or so to go before we reach Stedman. Well, we've about reached Stedman and we've run into a no trespassing sign, so it looks like we're going to have to take a look around the outskirts of Stedman. The mines here haven't been worked in a while, but there are tentative plans to reopen them at some point. And I just have to assume that the owners probably don't want people falling into open mine shafts on their property. So we'll just have to see what we could see from the outside. But like Ragtown, it looks like they were mining everywhere around here. And it looks like we may have found the town dump over here. Stedman was founded by John Sutter when he found gold here in 1898. Sutter worked for the railroad and was actually searching for water when he found the gold. Stedman was originally named Camp Rochester, after Rochester, New York, but because another Rochester existed locally, it was later renamed Stedman. And unlike Ragtown, right away you could tell there was a town here just based on the number of cans here. And it looks like this mountain is just filled with mines as well. The biggest and richest mine here is the Bagdad-Chase mine, and in fact it is the richest mine ever found in this county. Like a lot of mines though, there was a big initial boom here. Then as the easy to reach gold and copper was extracted, the boom began to fade. Despite this being the richest mine ever found in the county, things didn't really work out well for Sutter. Unfortunately, he sold the mine cheaply in 1902 and ended up poor. By 1926, he was working as a watchman here at the mine he discovered where millions in gold and copper were extracted. That probably really had to sting. By November of 1902, Stedman had reached its peak. There were 40 workers' cabins here, some with 5 rooms. And surprisingly, for a mining camp this remote, Stedman even had telephone service. And let's get to higher ground to see if we can get a better view of the town site on the other side of the fence. There's some sort of metal here. It looks like it may have been part of a tank. One important thing they didn't find here was the thing Sutter had been originally searching for: water. So water had to be piped in from Newberry Springs and stored in a tank. Most of the miners here were Scandinavian, and locals started jokingly calling the camp Copenhagen. But this is about as far from Denmark as you can get. Then again, I've never been to Copenhagen, but I'm pretty sure it looks nothing like this. Looks like they dug in right here to see if they could find anything. We should be able to get a good view of the town site from up here, and maybe even the old railroad bed. And wow, there's an RV out on the property. I don't see any people, but the RV looks to be in great condition, so it's probably occupied by either security or Heisenberg and Jesse Pinkman. Either way, I'm going to stay as far away as possible, and this is as close as we'll get to the town site. But down below us is where the town of Stedman once stood. It's a little hard to make out, but over in this direction is the old railroad grade. As mining production started declining, the railroad saw less use, and after a flood in the 1930s, the tracks were never repaired. Eventually, what was left of the rails were sold and moved to the Philippines. In 1904, the town briefly got its own post office, but it didn't last long. By November of 1907, it was discontinued as the boom period began to end. The peak here was from 1902 to 1916, and then over the last century, mining would come back now and again. By the 1970s, this place was pretty much abandoned, but as we can see here, there are still plans to make another go at it. It just proves these two ghost towns may have faded from the map, but the lure of gold that created them is still out here.
So that's our look at the ghost towns of Ragtown and Stedman, or at least what little we could see of them. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.